Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded September 29th, 2021. Good afternoon, Franklin. Good afternoon, Brodie.
Good afternoon, both of you.
Yeah, it's been a week. I think we're all experiencing something, man, that sort of, doesn't taste good. Like we're all really working. Like I'm heads down, like doing this. And then shameful admission, I had all these people that were trying to ping me in Discord. Up until last year, I had never used Discord, right?
There's another one in there for you, by the way, Joe replied to.
Yeah, I'm replying to Hyperfan. I'm gonna try to help him write a query so he can do something with the shadow IT alerts that are coming in. So I've seen it before, and I got the query somewhere where he wants to see the full path. So if someone doing data exfiltration to an unsanctioned app, not only does he want Sentinel to alert on it, which it will, right? Because there's a default policy in MCAS that anything over 1 gigabyte within, it might have been 30 minutes, an hour. I forget what the default is, but I've modified that and sort of set the threshold a little bit higher. But you gotta play with the time, because you gotta realize if you're uploading, not all broadband is equal. So the X variable is how long if you got dial up, you may never set the thing off, right? Because it'll take forever to get it up. If you got fiber to the cloud, or express route, it could. So his matter of fact, I know exactly where the query is. I sure do. It's a function. It's actually not a query.
There you go.
It's built in.
We have Brodie this week. He looks a year older since the last time I've seen him.
He does look a year old. I mean, his hair's growing out. He's, he has the fine Canadian part to the left side of his head. And hey man, we appreciate you coming on. We've been sort of crazy busy. We're trying to map out the rest of the guests for the year, but a lot of the folks that I've invited happen to be the wrong people to invite, because a lot of them are involved with Ignite and everybody's head is down. I'm like, Ignite's November. They're like, this stuff has to be in 2 weeks before Ignite. So everybody's grinding, trying to get it done. But I've met some really impressive folks that I believe that once we start landing the people, I think we're going to kick off next week with the very first person. Brodie, I'll share you the guest list with pictures so you can see everybody I invited, and then I'll put in some nomenclature about who accepted. Some people on holiday, some of the people out of the country, but I think we're gonna have an impressive list. The next 2 weeks we're booked after you. I won't spoil the show too much about the guest name, but the topics are going to be DLP, app governance, and how this integrates with MCAS. Right.
Oh, perfect. That's exactly what I need to hear, actually. Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. Him and I had a great talk. Let me tell you something else about our podcast. We must be intimidated. I've had some people say, yes, but can we talk first? I want to make sure I don't get on and sound dumb and I'm like, dude, we're laid back. Go listen to the other episodes. It's not like that. So it
happens though, right? If you're new to it, like my first time coming on, I was just learning Compliance Center. And you guys are like, oh yeah, come on and talk compliance. I'm like, I just learned this like last month. I don't have all the answers. Then Frank's giving me licensing questions. It's like stump the chump, right? So I get it. It can be intimidating, but you do it a few times, it's good.
Well, you're a PFE, you're a consultant, you're a deliverable skill set. So if you got what's the term, thick skin or thin skin? Because I've had many customers tell me, you don't know your ass from a hole in the ground. What's a hole? You pivot back and say, hey, my biggest thing is what I tell you right now may not be relevant next week.
Exactly. And you got to, right? You got to have low egos. You got to have thick skin. I actually had a customer apologize to me the other day because they were ranting about Microsoft. They're like, yesterday I was kind of, ranting and, calling out. And it's like, we've been working on Microsoft technology my whole career, my whole life. I've never ranted about Microsoft technology before, so it's a safe space with customers. Sometimes you're the sounding board, right? As a consultant, and you have to accept all blame and do what you can to provide value and get questions answered. So It happens, right? No big
And,
deal.
and unless that product has me as one of the engineers, coders, deliverables, it's not my job to defend the technology. It's my job to articulate what the technology is supposed to work like, right? And anybody, that really wants to be a butthead about it, I'll go read the fine print. It's everywhere from the exams you take that what you're taking now is based on this time, not what's the feature set, hence unified portal, Frank's questions, and other things. But I am very empathetic to customers because they don't always share what's making them rant, like timelines, over budget, someone quit. So they're just giving you their frustration, not the things behind them, right? Or the worry. I don't get this done. Do I get fired? Do I get lowered on the totem pole? And they also don't express frustration. I didn't want to do this. My boss made me do it.
I'm just here because he said we needed a consultant. Yeah.
Consulting is,
I got you.
I, for lack of a better word, you get paid to do two things as a consultant. Tell people stuff they already know and be the bad guy. That's it.
Yeah. And be very polite and accept all responsibility. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why Frank has never been a consultant in his life.
Yeah. Hey, so Brodie, we're gonna have an episode where we talk about how we got our first IT job. So
great.
That
I have the best. I have the best story.
I don't know. I think I'm gonna have the best story. So we're gonna invite listeners on to have their story told, how they got their first IT job, to see who's got the best. Then we'll have a vote to see who has who had the best IT job, first IT job story. So hopefully you have one.
I've got one, but can I also maybe add a category suggestion? Because I know I'll win this category. Can we also have the best IT job in your career? Right? Because later on, I had a really great
no, it's
job.
how you got the job.
Oh, how I got
not the job itself. The story of getting the job.
Getting that first thing that got you into information technology, which is a super generic term, but how you got into information technology, because I'm a technologist, I'm an engineer by degree, so that's technology, right? STEM, whatever. But I got a pretty cool story, and the story resonates to me because
he's gonna give it away. Watch.
Right now, here we go.
It still makes me think about there. I won't give it away, but the person that gave me my first break to this day, he could call me anytime.
Cool.
Anytime. You call me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've had some.
Yeah.
Then we might need to go.
I know I got a better story. I can already tell.
We can go. Which IT job got you fired? Right, because you haven't done your work until you've been fired, right? I've had mine. And I ain't quitting. You have to fire me, and you fired. Well, good.
Sweet.
Work here anyway.
Yeah.
So let's So Brodie's been busting me up on the back channels about MCAS stuff, MDI stuff, and making me go in my lab, and I got to do something with somebody else asked me something about MDI and the logs in the Sentinel. Like, you've been able to get MDI logs in the Sentinel, for a while, because Sentinel's not the actual thing that's really sending the logs, it's the MCAS integration. So MCAS integration, MDI to MCAS to that, and there is a connector in Sentinel for MDI, or is it called Microsoft Defender, and then just includes all them in there, and it says coming soon. But for those who want to know, hey, how can I get these logs? And matter of fact, they do go to Sentinel. I've seen it, and they go into the unified portal, because I had a customer that was running Nexus Tenable scans. It was making MDI go crazy, like numeration of groups, adding folks to groups. It was doing all these automated attacks. So I got to get my MDI environment back up. I'm down to one domain controller here, so I got to go fix a couple things, add a couple, and that's a product that's really hard to lab up, because you got to realize what you're running, but it can be done. So I tell customers, if you want to do it, a couple of ways to do it. First of all, make sure you get a get out of jail free card. Second thing is understand what you're doing when you do this. So make sure that if you're going to try to test the technology, you test it from a perspective of no attack should be coming, or no activity should be coming from anything other than this subnet and this IP address. And then let people know, or not, and then just download Kali, a couple other tools, Kali mostly for that.
So,
and then,
MDI has their own lab that they have an entire walkthrough for you to set up and do the attack.
I would like to talk about this.
It's not easy to set up.
Really?
So,
well, it is, and it isn't. Yeah. Anyway, let finish what you're saying. But I have.
I'm interested in hearing your experience on this, Brodie.
Yeah. So that's all it is. I just happen to like to set up the lab, and plus my lab is disposable. I can run these attacks against it and be able to see these things and not worry about getting in. But I've had some customers who have labs that are definitely segmented off to be able to see cache technology. Kernel roasting, pass to hash, overpass, enumeration, bind, DNS. Folks arbitrarily running, NS lookup, trying to do zone transfers. Those things show up too, right? So I'd like to hear your story about what you and I have been sort of talking about in your experience, everything from the lab into what you're doing with the customer. Whatever you can tell. Brodie,
yeah. I know the rules. I know the rules. Yeah, I'm not going to give away domain creds for customers on the pod. Don't worry. And first off, thanks for the help, because I've been in a bind a few times this week on a number of items. So Edward, I appreciate you getting back to me quickly. And yeah, I don't know what the SLA is in Discord for you, but we'll have to review your contract and making sure that you're meeting expectations.
God, I am horrible at Discord, man. I'm going through.
When you have a question, Edward actually gets back to you. He leaves me hanging for weeks. I have to ask him at the beginning of the podcast. Hey, I hit you up on Thursday about this question. He actually gets back to people faster on Discord than he does to me before the podcast.
I don't know. I don't know about that. He's exaggerating. But ignorance, Discord ignorance, DI. So it said text channels. It didn't occur to me that those text channels are part of our Discord environment, and each one of them. And first of all, I go, who created all these damn channels? And so I'm like, this is Frank's doing, or Rod's doing, somebody doing this, right? Because the moderators are Brodie and Rod, and then the owners are me and Frank. So I'm a little bit embarrassed because I've had Discord up because I'm part of a bunch of cybersecurity things, but I'm going through stuff. People have asked me. I've had a job offer in Discord. I just missed it.
Great. That's nice. Nice to be wanted. Good job.
Hey, we're looking for a guy.
I might have to leave early, so I want to hear about this lab.
Okay. Defender for Identity project, right? Defender for Identity project. Let's start there, and then if you got to go, Frank, that's cool. Okay, so I'll give you the background, and then I'll tell you what's going on here. So I have a Defender for Identity engagement, major retailer, national presence, and they need to deploy Defender for Identity. And we're going to get about 16 domain controllers as part of the gig. And they've got like 5 different domains. So we want to have coverage across all those different domains. And they're a great team to work with. But we're down to the wire getting it configured because this particular organization has a organizational change freeze starting October 1st. Because Q4 retail, that's their moneymaker, right? So October 1st, too bad. You're not doing anything. So it's September 29th today. So we're right up against the line here and getting it done. So to prepare, to say that properly, for said engagement, I spun up a lab, right? And, Edward, you were making fun of me a few months ago about, it's tough to spin up the lab, blah, blah, blah. And we internally, I think you were on that same call, Ed, the internal call with those two gentlemen, those two security professionals out of Germany. They ran Active Directory attacks and MDI simulations using the lab resources, and they showed off the whole thing. And what's better than sitting in front of a 1-hour presentation with other Microsoft professionals, watching Microsoft professionals break into Microsoft tools? Pretty fun, right? We all get to learn something, and you network with the people in chat. So anyway, so I set up, according to them, a nested Hyper-V lab in Azure. All right, so not Azure IaaS, because that would be bad if I ran attacks against that, but a nested environment within that. So that's fine. 3 DCs, I got Azure AD Connect running, I've got a management server, a couple client machines, blah, blah, blah. That's all fine, right? So I'm educating myself on the install because it's my first time actually installing it. I didn't have any of these MDI gigs before that. So educating myself on the install, the funness with the GMSA accounts, making sure they have the appropriate permissions, because that's a big hang up for the sensors for MDI. Just educating myself on all the gotchas, right, on how you assign those permissions against the DCs, et cetera. So I felt pretty good about it. And then I'm like, okay, we're getting to the point now where I need to run an operations workshop. I need to teach the customer about the different types of attacks. So I need to hydrate my alerts. I need to hydrate, I need to make some nastiness show up. And you get the classic right away. If you have an Azure AD Connect server, you get the first alert always comes up. It's suspected DC sync attack, replication of directory services. And that's to be expected because your Azure AD Connect server replicates your on-prem AD and enumerates it with Azure Active Directory, right? So that's always the first false positive, and there's ways to mitigate that. You can add an exception to an alert with a particular server, and that's our recommendation generally. Don't what's the word I'm looking for? Don't exclude the entire server because other nastiness could occur on it, but maybe think about suppressing DC sync attack alerts from that server so it's not generating a boatload of noise for your SOC, right? Through whatever means. This particular customer pipes everything through to Splunk, and that's how they do it. They link up to the M365 security graph that way. So I'm like, okay, let's run through some labs on, let me share my screen. I finally closed enough tabs where I can do this effectively. So
I think you have
can
to
I
make
share?
your host, Edward.
Edward, can you figure that out?
Let me make your host. So let me go ahead
Got
and
that? All
so
right,
what I
share
do is
screen.
click on here. Hold on for a second.
Oh,
Make
hurry up.
host. You want to change the host to Brodie C. Brodie C is not a host.
Yeah, thank you. Great. Okay, so on the screen right now is the, it's the how-to guide for Defender for Identity security lab setup. And it walks through actually setting up the security lab, and that's fine. I can do that on my own, but I started running the playbooks myself, okay? Because I wanted to generate alerts. So I started going through the reconnaissance playbooks. These are easy, right? I'm scrolling through this really quick. I'm not going to read it line by line. Listeners, we'll put it in the show notes and we'll make sure there's a link to this. But basically what we have on the screen, if you're listening on pod, is, basic NS lookup commands, trying to enumerate the domain, trying to enumerate domain controllers specifically, trying to pull specific groups from the domain, right? We can look up a lot of different information just with NS lookup commands. None of those generated alerts in MDI, like the lab seems to suggest they should. I'm like, okay, well, this is annoying because I've got to give the customer, and again, we're at 72 hours before change freeze. I've got to give them a method that's not load up Nessus or load up, a major pen tool, with the change freeze coming up. I've got to give them an easy way to generate some alerts, and I've got to have an easy way to generate some alerts so I can show them and demonstrate how the tool works. Nothing for NS lookup was working. I was very upset, very upset. So we scroll down here, and there's some more directory service reconnaissance tasks or examples that you can use, right? Net user domain didn't generate anything. Net group domain, while it did enumerate all of the groups, and I could enumerate all the domain admins groups and the other 80 groups, and as a regular user on a normal Windows 10 workstation, nothing's still triggered on my MDI environment. And I just don't have time for this, right? So I'm scrolling down, like, okay, what else will do this? And if you keep going down, it says, okay, let's start downloading some third-party tools, right? So let's download netsess.exe. This did trigger an alert, thank goodness, on the MDI environment. And I'll show you that to you right here. It triggered a user and IP reconnaissance SMB alert. And I've got my user here. His name is Carl Compromised. I also think that's hilarious. Thanks for laughing. And I just use this as a quick example for the customer. Be like, okay, here's what an alert looks like. Here's the different items, et cetera, et cetera. But I wanted more. Ed, and potentially Frank, who may have had to log off there. And so I made an oopsie. Ed. Guess what I did?
What did you do?
I went and downloaded, as per the lab, Mimikatz on my Microsoft issued Surface.
Your manager got an email.
manager sure got an email. Yeah, I have my first Microsoft security incident that I needed to respond to. And it was blocked. I couldn't download it anyway, right? I'm like, oh darn, I can't do that. Well, I've got the one alert, so that's fine. No big deal. Yeah, big red bang email, CDoc, hey, Mimikatz, not a good idea. Shouldn't be doing that. Please attest that you've removed it. And I felt terrible. But my manager's like, I kind of figured that was going on. You're my security guy, right? So oopsies. Anybody out there working at Microsoft who hasn't had this happen yet, don't download Mimikatz directly to your Microsoft endpoint. Instead, download it directly to the nested virtual machine. Then you can start playing around, right? Because I actually pinged the SOC analyst and I'm like, hey, can I just ask you like some questions on how I can not get in trouble for doing this, but still do it, because I need to do it to generate logs, example for customers. We're also not allowed to actually demonstrate how to use the tools, which is totally fair. And I wasn't going to do that. It was just, I want to generate the alerts so you can see some of the examples that we have here, right? So anyway, that was my bad, and I've learned that lesson now. And so that just happened today, actually. Manager's cool with it. SOC analyst is cool with it. We're all friends now. We're linked up on LinkedIn. We can laugh about it. So
and
that was
on
fun.
And on that note, don't download Tor browsers.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
You get a note.
Yeah. Okay. Noted. I guess you've also got a few emails from CDoc in your inbox. Yeah. It happens. So, and another, so, okay. So just so you know, these random NS lookup commands, they're not generating anything. And I thought that was surprising. I still don't know why yet. I know when you install Defender for Identity, there's a 30-day learning period before it knows regular behavior versus potentially malicious behavior, right? But I still didn't see it in the relevant places looking at the documentation. And that's where I basically started rushing. And I'm like, okay, well, I need alerts. And that's where I made the oopsie of downloading Mimikatz. Didn't get an alert for NetSS. That was interesting. But, that's that's more enumeration versus Mimikatz, where you can actually start, performing some privilege escalation attacks and whatnot, which gets serious. So
there are two things to consider. The download of the product is not necessarily activity that MDI may say, yo, what are you doing? That should have been something to MDE. What are you downloading this for? Right. So running it, yes. Just downloading it, I don't know if that's going to be enough for MDI to do it. So I think MDE needs to say, yo, I saw something. And then subsequently MDI, if they see the tool actually being run, then it goes.
Yeah, and that's fair, right? That's fair. And like, it wouldn't even let me download Mimikatz. MDE kicked in. It's like, nope, this is a potential virus. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess it would be. Well, I guess your interpretation of it would be. But yeah, I didn't run any of this on my own corporate workstation, obviously, just running it in the lab. And but anyway, it's still funny how the lab, the reconnaissance playbook, the NS lookups didn't generate alerts. And so that was the crux of why I was kind of rushing to generate an alert. And I was moving through this quicker without thinking about my tactics and what we learned about on that call, Ed, where it's like, how can we effectively as security professionals at Microsoft test these tools and generate alerts and hydrate our labs so that when it's time to talk to customers, we don't just have a blank slate, right? Or we're not just showing pictures, we're actually showing the experience and leveraging this. So fun learning lesson. Oh, it's also noted in our consulting guide to do not encourage the customer to perform domain dominance playbook actions in their production environment. Goes without saying, but it's in red text. And I made sure I provided the link because it's important that this organization's teams, and they have an internal red team as well, right? Purple team these days, we call it, I guess. It's important that they know about the playbook and the ability to test this in dev environments, et cetera. And if they want to try some domain dominant stuff, the real fun stuff, they should do so not in production for obvious reasons, especially when we're coming up on that high importance Q4 retail quarter that we're coming up to here. So MDI story, that's basically been my last few weeks for closing off that project. I've got some other ones we can talk about, Ed, but that's MDI. And I got to say, some of the things that really hung up the customer were, they were sure that they made the GMSA accounts for the sensors according to spec, but we'd still have sensors just stuck in running status. And there's a couple ways that you can fix that, like granting logon as rights, and making sure that the appropriate group membership is there. But still, sometimes they had to recreate the GMSA account with the permissions, and only then did it work. Even though they thought, yeah, no, I've got it, it's dialed. It took a lot of repetition and learning on their part to understand, specifically what's needed in order to ensure the solution runs correctly, and that those sensors can properly read the domains that they're there to monitor, right? And so it was a big learning experience for everybody, and I'm really happy I went through it, and so is the customer, right? So
yeah, I've seen some customers who've gotten frustrated with trying to do that, and it's important if you're running large organizations, and it's sort of recommended, but you don't necessarily need it, right? And I don't want to tell the customer either way and put my neck out there by saying it, but if you just can't, you got to get it up. You can create an atypical account, right? And then you can make that password long as you tall, right? Now, passwords can be broken, and there's no thing that says the longer the password, you got enough power in the computer can do it. But when you go that route with MDI, you lose something, right? Because if now you can't deploy security best practices, best use cases. Like if you had a customer do this, we could not figure out why it wouldn't work. Well, they created a long account and they made the password long, and they went in and said, user cannot change password, stuff like that. But here's what happened. They had some type of process that every account that was created got MFA put on it. You can't MFA the account. There's nobody there to authenticate the account, right? So they had to go back and get the GMSA account done. And it takes some reading and some practice. But at this day and time, what are we, 2021? What entity doesn't have a sandbox environment where you can go do this? You can just go do this stuff. Even if you can't put it in the cloud, the cost of just standing up a virtualized environment separate so you can do these things is more effort than it is cost. These are folks who want to measure effort and importance to just getting the task done. But, I have a different mentality because I'm a distance runner. You can lie all day about your training, your miles, your nutrition. You'll be found out. So I tell customers, take your time and prepare. And we're all guilty because timelines don't move because you want to be thorough, right? But I want you to notice something here that we talked about earlier in the call. Notice two things here. Go back to your alerts that you generated in the thing. Show me the alerts. Notice that you're investigating alerts where?
Through Cloud App Security. Yes, I don't have now. Do you have that? I was listening to last week's pod today, and I've been a little tardy with attending some of the live meetings lately because, again, like you said, just really busy lately. But you were talking about how you got the MDI signals in the unified portal because you're in the preview. Is that right? You got that in your lab?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can do it in here. I can tell immediately if you go down to settings. No, not settings. Go back to MCAS, and then in MCAS go to upper right gear. Go down to settings. Mid left. My phone is just acting crazy.
There we go.
Yeah, just right there. So you're enabled, and it takes about 12 hours, and so you can see it. Yeah.
And so it's not the old Azure ATP lab. It's this. It's been this for a while, right? But it's like, are we feeding that to security.microsoft.com yet?
Yes, we are.
Sounds like you are. Yeah. So I got to get on that program. Tell me how.
Christina Quick, and say, hey, I'd like to be part of the PRP. I tell you what, even better. Shoot me an email. I'll send you the link. It's going to ask for your tenant ID and subscription, and they'll add you, and you'll be fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Christina Quick is awesome. Then ask her, make sure when you enroll in it, that you add it to the private preview Teams channel. They no longer send out emails. You got to be in the team. Everything is in there, right?
Sure.
Stuff that you wouldn't believe in. And like, oh my God, I didn't know this is this, because sometimes the engineering team doesn't even publish improvements to the product. So let's take a look at your environment really quick. Go to
Sure.
Go back to your unified portal. Yeah, you're there. See identities?
Yeah, it's in here. This is where I'm managing all the settings. But what I'd really like is for the alerts and signals to be in the primary alert.
So go up to alerts. Yeah, let's give
it's
a little
not
bit
a
more.
very sorry, go ahead.
Let me move this.
It needs more.
Yeah, let me move this here. I'm trying to see.
Oh, they are here. Yeah, there we go.
There you go. This is getting faster.
I just ran this.
I talked to some of the people that were owning this. Nothing is instantaneous, right? But this is supposed to be really fast by the end of October. About signals bilateral in and out, incident resolution, close it somewhere, it closes out everywhere. So I've been sort of on those calls, and they're telling me what the difficulties are getting it done, but they're getting it. But you can see it's here.
You know what's funny about this? I checked and I just ran. Remember, because I was pinging you like yesterday. Thanks for listening to my spam teams. I've got 1 week here. It's not picking up the activity from the Nessus app. But if I go 30 days, it will. And it's calling it first activity September 17th. I know for a fact that was yesterday. So that's a little off still. That's funny. Because I would have loved to show the customer this. That's super funny. And yeah, you can manage it through here, right? Is this true or false?
Well, the first activity, I think you need to go look at what that define is. But look, so I can tell you what it is.
Okay.
And I'm gonna try to get close to it. You see what says 17th?
Yeah.
And you see what generated on?
Yeah.
28th, yesterday. So there is a little bit of lag from where the back end Mongo database that sits in the cloud, takes this stuff, rationalize it, normalize it, and do everything else. So the easiest way to figure out this is go back to your calendar and say, what did I do on the 17th? Is that the day you deployed it? MDI.
Yeah, and it wasn't MDI, but it was the date I think I deployed the new domain controller in question, because the client and the user and the action were all done yesterday. But I created a brand new domain controller to just step through the installation process one more time, so I was fresh on it. And that might be the time and date that I did that.
That first activity and that last activity, I think that is the status of the sensor. When did the sensor report into me? Right.
Okay.
We can. I have a way in my lab I can validate that. But matter of fact, I have to guess. I'm looking away because I'm looking in my lab following you, but I can actually tell you. So you're in the hold on for a second.
Yeah, that's super funny. And you know what? While you're looking that up, I just want to pull the thread on a comment you made there about, sometimes the product team doesn't announce items, and, we need to ensure customers know that things can change at every time. I like to set that expectation at the beginning with customers. It's like, hey, I'm here as a conduit. I'm here to help you, but understand I don't have all the answers. And if you say that up front, it really creates a good base moving forward, right? It's not stump the chump. It's not like, I'm here to know everything and I know everything about this product. You can't get anybody better than me. It just isn't the case, right? Unless you're the lead engineer on the product. And so if you say things like, well, Microsoft's an agile development shop, just like any major cloud provider, we're making changes daily, weekly, all the time, right? And some customers are like, don't just send me documentation articles. And I'm like, well, our official documentation that's linked to Git repos and is updated regularly by the community. Because honestly, if I tell you something in an email or a message, that could be different tomorrow. Your best source of information are these links that take you to these sites, right? And even if it's referencing the old names like Azure ATP, and you click on a link, it'll redirect now to the new MDI links, and it's being maintained and updated. So you just got to set those expectations with people that this is all happening all the time. There's no versioning, right? This isn't like Windows 98, 95, right? Like this is daily changes. This is product enhancements on the fly, different preview rings. So yeah, it's just an important thing for everyone to grasp on.
They have to understand that I think some people lose the perspective that Microsoft is a software company, and they're very much in the CI/CD, right? Continuous improvement, updates and stuff that's rolling, right? Nobody's writing code the way they used to and check in. I mean, it's constantly, going from conception, whatever stages, QA, reams, right? Because, if you need perspective, think about how Azure is. Azure's continually things, and I think it's as much as they put in, I'm starting to see retirement of services now. This is going to be discontinued. You got this, you got I remember anybody who was on the old Service Manager Azure portal that had to eventually move over to ARM should understand this. You got so many days to move your stuff. We're not moving it for you, right? You need to move your stuff. But I'm trying to look up something. Give me something, Ray. I think I know. I want to confirm that what I just said on here is about that first activity and last activity, because the reason that first activity
really curious
was the sensor. Looks like the sensor, the domain controllers deployed 713, installed 733, and then you got an updated 755, which fits the bill of when the sensor checks in. But I'm gonna check something first.
Okay. Man, I got the filters up here. I wish, it looks like you can't filter on. What's the word I was just looking for? You can't filter on the generated on date and time. It's only the first activity. I would love to have the filter. Maybe it's an incidence. Let's see. There we go. But what day was that impacted on? Let's see, it should be 3 days. No, even incidents. Incidents isn't showing me when the actual enumeration occurred, or the reconnaissance, occurred. It's showing that initial date that we were just talking about. It doesn't look like I can pick that. I can pick the incident ID, the first and last activity. This is scaled out weird too. I gotta zoom out. Oh yeah, look, we gotta scroll way to the right here. Here we go. Okay, so if you go into incidents, and I scroll way to the right. No, it's still first and last activity. It's not when I actually did the reconnaissance. That's super funny. I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Create a new security group containing all your domain controls with sensor running with permission to GMSA. Give me a second here. Okay, got that. Let me see here. You can do that. ADFS. You do this. So
if you're listening on the pod, Edward is working so hard, steam is coming out of his ears right now.
Pretty much. One thing you could probably do, you could go into the Windows event logs of the domain controller and try to match that first scene to the install date or the sensor spin up.
Okay.
And that'll give it to you. Because I'm not finding this readily, but if I can find it, I'll make sure I bring it up to identify. Plus, I know the program manager that runs MDI, so I'll just ask Rick, what does these two things mean, man? I have no idea what they mean, Rick. Tell me what these mean.
Hey, we're all learning here, right? Just another example. You and I, we're in this space all the time. We're still learning on the fly here, right? Things are
something I haven't done. I haven't done since ATA. And I did it a couple times with Azure Advanced Threat Protection before the name. Everybody's using the lightweight gateway / sensor. Nobody's using spam ports. You know why?
Because it's a pain in the butt, and you have to span everything across multiple geographies in order to get the right logging.
Yep, and you make the networking team look bad.
Yeah, right. You mentioned this was a few pods ago. It was like nobody has their whole network architecture dialed in right now necessarily because they're all in agile methodology.
Yeah, and don't make the networking guys look bad. Like, yeah, we don't have an up-to-date network diagram, and now they're reluctant to come to the meetings, right? And they don't want to be found out. They haven't updated the switches. They haven't updated, the management VLAN and stuff like that. So there are some. I've seen some customers who have the port span, but when I say that their network is networked, it may have been SolarWinds, which is in itself, but they had a very good network mapping and change control tool. It wasn't SolarWinds, it was something else. So they were able to do this because nothing could be deployed. They really had networking as code on premise, right? Nothing gets deployed until it meets these things, have all these, SNMP, community strings clearly defined. And so they were able to scan and come back and give you everything, iOS version stuff. So, but the short of it is, don't make the networking team look bad. Don't make the virtualization team look bad. One thing you're going to encounter, you haven't encountered yet, if your customer is virtualizing their DCs, you're going to get sensor health alerts all day long. And there are some things. There are some things.
Yeah. You got to disable
tell you how to go.
ballooning.
They tell you to go remediate that, but you're going to get those sensor fails all the time, right? And that's because of the way the domain controllers, the NIC, is interacting with the host as a guest and the way that sensor runs. It resolves itself. So I think in mine, and it should be to everyone, you will get an alert with an unhealthy sensor. But now they're alerting when the sensor is healthy again. So you don't have to guess. Because
so if you're just checking your email,
because audit teams go, I get one of these, I'm smarter than you audit guys. Well, you got an unhealthy sensor here at 7, but if you don't have the sensors healthy, what occurred between here and here? And even if you do that, sensors unhealthy or can't handle the amount of authentication traffic, and you have one that says now I am healthy, or a security auditor who wants to be a pain in your butt would go, so you're saying we're unprotected between here and here, and that's not the case, right? Because it's a bunch of tripwires. Not all the domain controllers are offline, so you still have protection. It would take someone the ability to understand when the sensor is not going to be able to capture the traffic and jump from domain control to domain control. You're going to be found out, right? So if you had to really just get one in, you would have some protection. Total coverage is covering all your domain controllers. But even if someone got to one domain controller that you forgot to put the sensor on, which we was just say no sensor unprotected, eventually they're going to do something that the other domain controllers are going to see because they're all talking to each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Replicating. Yeah.
Yeah. You would have to have someone who said, okay, this domain controller I see doesn't have it. So this is going to be my base camp. And now they have to be very skilled that anytime they start leaving an unprotected resource, that they don't trip the other ones. Because if you do a DNS zone transfer, the other domain controllers are going to flip and they're going to go, hey, why are you doing this? Right?
Yeah.
If you do something like an LDAP bind and some of these other things, ideally you want every domain controller, but some is better than nothing. Right?
At least one in every domain and the redundant pairs. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So
but not necessarily all of them.
And I tell people with MDI, you don't want any alerts. You don't want any. Yeah. This is the one product you wanted to be quiet if we got you deployed, because if it starts lighting up, somebody's doing something dumb or somebody's doing something bad. Right.
Yeah, I was happy to see that this particular customer didn't have anything except for that to be expected Azure AD Connect server alert, the DC sync attack alert, which you see, as kind of like your first alert. Nothing else though, which was great, right? I'm glad it wasn't like turn on a bunch of sensors and like, whoa, we gotta have some follow-up conversations here, some stuff going on, right? So yeah, you're right.
And why this is super important, you'll notice in your screen you have an Exchange server in the entity tags.
Right.
there are still some people who are running Exchange servers.
Yeah, that happens. Oh, why? Was there a major Exchange vulnerability recently, Ed?
It's always an Exchange vulnerability. Go look in your Sentinel lab. You'll see it. They're writing word books for it. It's always something, right? The biggest thing now is this Azure vulnerability with Linux servers with the OMI and as well as the container break out the container thing. I listened to a really, really deep security guy. I listened to it twice to say, wow, this is major, right? It's I
breaking out of
understand.
containers is like breaking out of VMs, right? It's terrible. It's absolutely at the whole point of being able to containerize these things is so they're
not because of Azure, but it was because of a third-party orchestration tool called RC, runtime component, runtime coordinator. I think that's what RC, and they're using an old version of RC, and then they exploited a known vulnerability in the runtime for the container to orchestration to break out of it. Had they had an up-to-date version of it, but the problem with RC is, wait for it, it's open source. You know, so there are not that many contributors to it. It shouldn't have gotten past security overview. Maybe 20 people that contributed to it, maybe.
Yeah. Well, open source, you want to have the community to scrutinize, but if you don't have the people to actually perform the scrutiny that are skilled enough to catch, then, here we are.
So this Exchange server here is important because of not only vulnerabilities, but there are certain entities, industries that cannot completely go to 365 and still have it. And you may be in the middle of a migration, so you're in a hybrid mode.
Right.
One thing I found out that when you do migrations, you find out all the bad stuff. I've been in my share of data center moves, migration from mail, and then you catch something. What is this? This guy was terminated a year ago. And so, but yeah, man, I get it, man. That's good. I've been doing a lot of MDI stuff, playing with some MCAS stuff. I got to figure out some in MCAS. My brain is fried a little bit. And I'm gonna help out Hyperfan by trying to write that advanced hunting query so he can look at the complete file path. But I believe it's an Azure function. And let me see. I'm in Azure. I go to. So someone asked me a question: can I port MDI logs directly into Sentinel? So let me. I know you can do MCAS in a minute. Yeah. No. So there is a data connector in Sentinel that allows you to port it directly into Sentinel without having to do it with MCAS. Let me see here.
Nice. Yeah, show it. Edward, we've got a new lab environment coming up for customers that we can use to demo Sentinel. I got to admit, I've listened to this pod since the beginning. I've been working in this space, but I still have yet to be on a Sentinel gig. I have no real hands-on experience, and it was hard to get a lab going back in the day, and it's being made easier now. And so I'm actually on a community initiative with some other folks who, like a cloud solution architect, just met her today, and she wants to do a ground up level 100 to 400 Sentinel training guide, and I'm doing the ground up level 100 to 400 M365 Defender kind of guide, and we're merging our efforts together. And I'm looking forward to actually getting my hands dirty with it, because it's just an element I haven't had to do with my career yet, honestly. Yeah. Right. And I know it's a big gap, but it's just, that's where the work has been. It's been MIP or M365 Defender and a lot of endpoint stuff and MDI lately. So, and MCAS, like we talked about. So
yeah, you can't, you once you get over the fear of, I don't know, it's fear, anxiety, or like, oh my God, they asked me to sit on this thing and I've never deployed this, or I haven't deployed it in so long, right? Which is why, I've always say invest in yourself. Get your own E5 license. So it costs you $800 a year. Write it off as a tax on, but you got to have your lab. Because I've been in some demos and I'm relying on someone else's lab and the lab is down. I go,
yeah. I want my own sandbox. I hear you. I don't want to have to rely on others. But yeah, you and Matt Sozman, yeah, I get it. And, at Microsoft, we get those 90-day Defender for Endpoint tenants, but I just want to leverage my Visual Studio tenant, and I want to get a Defender for Endpoint license so I can have persistent lab and play with it and not have to blow everything up and rebuild it, even though rebuilding is a learning lesson in itself, right? But yeah, I hear you. I think I'm gonna have to make some investments in the new year to do that.
Yeah, make me host again.
Did you say please?
Please.
Now tell me how to do that. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. More. Make host. There you go, bud. Thanks for being polite.
I am polite.
Hey, it's Red Solo Cup Consulting. We haven't done a cheers yet. You got it?
I didn't have my red cup today. I'm drinking.
Okay, all right.
I'm classy today.
Very
I have
classy.
a glass.
Is that plastic?
What type of curmudgeon do you think I am?
I couldn't hear that actually. It must be your noise canceling features of that fancy headset of yours. I couldn't hear you sing it.
Oh, well, that's not the fine crystal.
So okay. That's locked up.
Yeah, inside Azure Defender, Azure Sentinel, there is a connector for Defender for Identity. So while you turn this on, it's still asking for you to go inside and your tenant running Defender for the cloud apps and stream your stuff to Azure Sentinel. In order to integrate with Microsoft Defender for Identity alerts, you got to be these two roles. And then, yes, I've connected so-and-so, right? And then this is how you get it in there. Right.
It's nice you only need security administrator, because I've been definitely advising people, this is or, right? Yeah, so security admin or global admin, everywhere. Don't just be rolling around with global admin creds, right? Even if you're PIMing into global admin once in a while, you can still get away with just security administrator for the majority of these security products that we're working in, right? You don't need to elevate all the way to global admin. It's a bit overprivileged, but
and even if you do, put PM in. Make these folks
totally should be default.
Make these folks elevate, and you can track them, right? And do that. So so you can do it through here. And if you go to Cloud App Security Connector, well, this one right here, Defender in preview still says in preview. You'll see that it's bringing all of them in here. So I'm sort of duplicating log effort, I think. See, I don't know why it keeps saying coming soon when I don't think this is going to last past November, right? Because they're going to have a connector. But you can see that I'm pulling in device logs from MDE, file events. I can see my log levels, right? So I have about 10 machines that are enrolled in MDE for me, and they're scattered across the United States and other parts of the world. So this is by virtue of my peers who don't mind. Hey man, can you onboard your machine? It doesn't have to be give me a machine I can onboard and that you use sometimes, so I can see telemetry. So I do get impossible travel, login from unknown IPs, different geographic regions. I get viable false positives because I knew it's them doing that, right? And so I like working with my peers out in the field. And sometimes I'll just say, hey, I'm going to send you a laptop. Use it for browsing, doing all this other stuff, man. So low browse already enrolled. And they'd be like, well, it's not going to do it in my network. I said, nope, this is just for me to get telemetry in other time zones to see activity. And I'll tell them, spinable VPN on to go do this, go do these things.
Download Mimikatz. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. But all these are security folks, right?
Yes. I know. That was the joke. That's the joke.
Yeah.
You know what you should do, Ed? I want to have a conversation with you on this on the side, but another episode idea after your myriad of amazing guests that are coming up would be just like how to develop a personal lab, right? To like, and how you developed your lab, even if there's some investment that needs to take place, stepping through like what you've got set up and how you've hydrated it over the years, just like, everything you've just started talking about. I'm very interested in how you've done that. And I'm sure listeners and other folks would be interested as well.
Yeah, it's me taking a hodgepodge of old machines, getting back and rolling up my sleeves to my roots and making a domain controller. It doesn't have to be powerful. I just need that function. Yeah. Standing up a 365 E5, M365 E5 subscription, paying for it out of my pocket. Finding some old raggedy laptops that can at least run Windows 10, 1709 or something, and then onboard them in MDE. I got enough firewall equipment and junk because that's where I came from, right?
So networking background. Yeah.
Totally. And then the most important aspect of any lab, time. Because when I get off this podcast, man, I don't want to do anything else with IT.
Yeah, I hear you totally. Well, and another suggestion that you brought up and came up on that call that I keep referencing was recording the actions that you take in your lab. So I got a Camtasia download, and I have now started recording anytime I do something. So I don't have to, because 2 months from now, I could be back on an MDI gig and I haven't touched it for 2 months. And honestly, there might be some aspects I'm like, oh yeah, how did I do that? Right. And I'm not going to go reduplicate those efforts. I'd rather just watch a video of myself doing it and be like, oh yeah, that's how I did it. Piece.
Two things are your friend. I don't care. I use Camtasia because I'm a TechSmith fan. Video your friend, video your work, product of choice, and OneNote.
Yes, OneNote.
Put your stuff in OneNote, man.
OneNote pays my mortgage. I don't know what I'd do without OneNote. Are you kidding me? I've got to put everything in OneNote. Like
that is the number one Microsoft application in education.
Yeah.
I love it. It's come a long way. I like it. I still run the old hard client.
Oh, me too. They run way quicker. Always the thick client. I'm sorry, product teams who are listening, but I need that snappy, I need that response time of the thick client. I can't just do everything through the browsers. And by the end of the day, like today, I've got only, 400 Edge tabs open. So I'd rather just have the thick client. So it's right there on my taskbar. I'm like, okay, OneNote, here we go. Let's do the notes. Let's take the screenshots. So I got you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what I do. So, hey man, very good conversation around, a product that doesn't get a lot of attention, but Microsoft Defender for Identity, formerly known as Azure Advanced Threat Protection, formerly known as Advanced Threat Analytics. But I believe when Ignite happens in November, you're going to see some very promising features that are going to be included. Let me tell you something else about the product.
Please do that.
Someone asked me this question, and I could not answer this. Who's the number one competitor, or who's also in that same space for MDI? I could not answer it.
I worked with. Can we say competitors? We can say competitors.
Yeah.
I did a Dark Trace implementation a few years ago.
Okay,
have you worked with that product?
Peers have. I have not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's cool. It was, ex-MI6 and CIA people have designed this super cool, UI, and it's an IDS, but also takes, Active Directory signals. It was detecting, large volumes of data being exfiltrated or moved around, right? If somebody browsed to like a public news site hosted out of China, it would show all the different connections that all the ads and stuff were generating, and it would blow up the machine, blow up the alerts window. So it was a pretty good solution. And that's the closest thing that I've worked with that's what I would think anywhere near a competitor for MDI, but I really don't know outside of that.
So I'm looking it up now. That's MDE. So I'm seeing some stuff. It says top 10 best identity protections for 2021. Let's see.
An ad. Yeah.
It's an ad. You're right.
Yeah. Look at the Gartner. Yeah. There's more. I haven't seen an MDI on a Gartner report yet. I know we've done the endpoint management and MDE and a few others I've seen come out recently, but I don't recall seeing an MDI style Gartner report. Got one. That'd be cool to see. Yeah, some reviews, etc. Well, and and I get it. Like, this is a Microsoft call. Everybody listening on the pod, not a sales call. You're here for a reason. But having that E5 full value conversation with people, it's like if you're paying for E5, especially, it's like it's a no-brainer. You want to fire all these things up because on their own, they stand up well on their own. But the integration and feeding everything to the unified portal, like that's the money right there, right? Like, get rid of those point solutions.
So when I hear a customer say something, we're going to go ahead and we got a minute left. When I hear a customer says, well, I'm not getting in bed with your product. I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. I had that happen to me this week. And I said, sure. That's one thing I've learned. Don't ever say that's an old way of thinking because people take that personally, right? So I didn't say that. I said, yeah, I get it. That's a cliche everybody say. I said, but which is easier to guard? One hen house with 50 eggs or 50 hen houses with one egg?
What an analogy. Wow. I'm going to steal that. That's good. That's good.
And so when he sort of paused and I said, let me expand a little bit. The cloak of stealth is the lack of integration between multiple products. And if you don't believe that Microsoft has gotten this, and they're going to get it better as people start when the Microsoft sellers truly understand what security is, because I'm going to be very uncharitable, half of them do not, which is why our adoption of products. And if I have any sellers out there, you know if I'm talking to you. But you're seeing the industry emulated. And they say, well, how is the industry emulated? Well, look at all these acquisitions where people are trying to build these platforms. They're buying SOAR products. They're trying to make their own, but they can't because the three big boys own it. AWS, GCP, and Azure. They have the platform to do this. And out of the other two competitors, I only believe Google has the oomph to emulate what we're doing. Why? Because they have G Suite. So they have the closest thing to 365. AWS doesn't have a mail system, right? They don't have any mail. It's just AWS is just selling books and stuff in the cloud, right?
That's all they're doing.
Big shout out to Jeff Bezos. Jeff, if you listen, come on the show.
Yeah, I'm sure he's listening. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I want to go into space with you next time. I'll let your boy. So that's all I have. I'm gonna tell you something else. Shameful admission. How do you stop sharing? How do you stop sharing?
At the bottom of the Zoom window, I think. This is hard. Why aren't we using Teams?
Yeah, because Frank's a Teams hater. I mean, he's always got some.
I think Frank is just I think the whole reason he co-hosts this podcast is because he gets to slag Microsoft while not technically being a Microsoft employee. I think that's.
You'd have thought he'd learned this lesson by bad mouthing YouTube, and we can't get back on YouTube because of him, right? So, he says people not listening. Now we're banned from YouTube forever, right?
Forever.
But hey, thanks to everybody. Good show. I'm excited about the guests for the next 2 weeks. Highly recommend anybody who's interested in data governance, data sovereignty, data loss prevention, shadow IT, and a big picture. We got a former Gartner, what they call the contributors that's going to come in and talk about non-Microsoft DLP perspective. And then he's going to come back and then the following week, how does Microsoft approach it? There may be a little bit of discussion. Oh, we got another good guest coming on. He's going to come on and talk about security operations, zero trust. Microsoft recently acquired CloudKnox. So one of the individuals from CloudKnox is coming on. It's already confirmed. When Frank can get all the invitations sent out to everybody. And then, so we're going to have some good guests. We may have some off weeks where the three of us or the four of us, once Rod returns, sort of get in, talk about what we're doing. I'm finding that our listeners who are hitting us on Discord, email, like these type of discussions about what they're seeing in the field and go, oh, so that's what I did wrong. Or, yep, I was right on track with this. So, plus I'm learning too. When our listeners ask me questions, I got to go research. I'm not bothered because you're making me learn, right? And because I'm not always in the industry that's going to make that particular nuance come up. I've worked in very focused industries, right? So because I'm not in manufacturing and because I'm not in, certain things, I'm a novice for things like Defender for IoT. Even though people want this type of stuff going into Sentinel and stuff like that. So lifetime learner, man. One day I'm gonna take a Zoom lesson. I have no idea how to stop this stupid thing.
Alt F4. Yeah. But anyway, thanks for having me on, Ed. Really appreciate it.
Hey,
yeah,
no problem.
I'm into it.
I know you're super busy up there. As always, you need something from me, let me know. Pop me an email before you leave the desk to get you into the private preview program, and then I'll copy Christine on it, and then I'll send you the link, and then they're going to ask you to go to your tenant and copy a GUID, a tenant ID, subscription ID, and it takes about 24 hours, and then you'll get access to the Teams channel, and then you'll see other things that you can opt in. Not everything is automatic. You have to opt into some of these things. So I've opted into some stuff, which is why my environment looks different, right? The opt-in is generally when you introduce something that could be potentially invasive to your environment. So you want to understand what you are doing. The automatic opt-ins are just, enhancement to the portal, right? No big deal.
Yeah.
You don't like the new look, don't go to it. So stuff like that.
Okay.
Well,
I'll
thanks
pop
to
you
our
an email.
listeners.
Thank you.
Thanks to our
Hey,
guests.
before you go, Ed, your insider risk management you got up there. I've got an insider risk management gig in January, and I heard the pod yesterday, and I'm looking forward to looking at some of these items and exercises you have because it's very interesting. Very
It is
interesting.
massive. It's not easy. This is a project that you'll get lost in. You come in and start trying to do this from an initiative and a framework and the way you do business. That in itself is months before you even get down to deploying the applicable technology that you're going to use. You could lose a consultant for years. And they're not going to come back, right?
Oh man.
But this is the future. This is, everybody is a threat until you prove yourself otherwise.
Yep. You said it best, man. Thank you.
Trust
yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah, I keep an eye on my wife. She's probably doing something now. I need to check her machine. All right, guys. Have a good one. Franklin, be safe. Thank you, Brodie. Once again, friend of the show. We're going to have some fun as we close out the year. If you need any help with anything, let me tell you something else. To our listeners, Brodie's not always a taker. I've had to hit him up for questions. He's helped me out and sent me some links. So we cross-pollinate. Is that a thing? Cross-pollinate. Yeah, we cross-pollinate. We
cross-pollinate. Okay. Well, yeah. And hey, we're all lifetime learners. We got to help each other out. We're all in this together, right? Nobody knows everything, and develop your networks, develop great contacts like Ed here, and lean on each other and help each other out, because that's the only way we're all gonna move forward together in this industry.
Yeah. All right. Have a good night, sir.
And
once again, happy belated birthday.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
When I come to Canada, I want to drive a Ferrari.
Yeah, you're going to be the second person to drive it then. Yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right. See you later.
Take care.